Charles Schulz drew peanuts for 50 years without missing a single day. He made millions of dollars and became the most famous cartoon artist in the world. But in December 1999, everything changed with one phone call. Schulz was found crying in his studio, telling his family, "It's over." The man who created Charlie Brown had kept a huge secret for months. His hands were shaking, his eyesight was getting bad, and doctors had given him terrible news. What happened in that room would end Peanuts forever and shock millions of fans who had no idea what was coming. Charles Monroe Schulz was born on November 26, 1922, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His father, Carl, was a barber who came from Germany. His mother, Dina, was a waitress before she stayed home to take care of the family. She had Norwegian roots. They lived in a small home and didn't have much money. Carl owned a little barber shop not far from where Dina worked. Charles was their only child. He grew up mostly in St. Paul, but during the Great Depression, they had to move to Needles, California for 2 hard years. Money was really tight, and that struggle became a big part of how Charles saw the world. Watching his parents try to make enough money stayed with him forever. Many years later, those same feelings showed up in the quiet sadness and small worries of the Peanuts characters. Just 2 days after he was born, Charles got the nickname Sparky from his Uncle Dot. It came from a popular cartoon horse called Sparkplug in the comic strip Barney Google. That horse was famous in 1922, and lots of kids were nicknamed Sparky back then. But none became more well-known than Charles Schulz. From the start, it felt like cartoons were part of his life. Even people at his job called him Sparky. Not Charles. When the Great Depression hit in late 1929, Charles was only 7. His dad's barber shop lost customers. They had to move more than once. He felt worried about everything. When they lived in Needles, California, it was so strange and lonely that he later said it was weird and awful. That fear of losing everything never left him. He remembered times when they had no food. He even added that into Peanuts when Charlie Brown worried they would starve if his dad lost his job. Charles knew what that felt like. He had lived through it. He also had a dog named Spike. Spike was a black and white hunting dog who did things no normal dog would do. He ate nails, tacks, rubber, and even razor blades. And somehow he was fine. In 1937, when Charles was just 14, he drew a picture of Spike and sent it to Ripley's Believe It or Not. They published it on February 22nd, 1937. That was the first time his drawing was printed anywhere. It meant the world to him. He was so proud. Spike could ring doorbells and even understood more than 50 words. He was more than a pet, but when Charles was about 10, Spike was hit by a car and died. That loss hit him really hard and stayed in his heart. Later, Snoopy was born from that memory. Even though they were poor, his mother supported his art. She bought him supplies even when they barely had money for food. His father didn't believe drawing could be a real job. He thought it was silly. This created tension in the house. Carl wanted Charles to do something practical like cut hair. Dina wanted him to follow his dreams. That support from his mom meant everything to him. Sadly, she got sick when he was still young. In 1943, she died from cervical cancer at just 48. It broke him. He was being drafted into the army that same week. She never got to see him succeed. After that, every drawing he made felt like it had a piece of her inside. When Charles was 6, he started school at Richards Gordon Elementary in St. Paul. He was so smart, they pushed him ahead by 2 grades. But that only made life harder. He was younger and smaller than everyone else. The other kids bullied him all the time. He was shy and quiet. He didn't fit in. That painful feeling of being left out followed him forever. It turned into Charlie Brown, the boy who never quite belongs, no matter how hard he tries. When Ripley's published his Spike drawing in 1937, Charles should have felt proud, but instead, his classmates made fun of him. They said the drawing was dumb. Even his teachers didn't care. He learned early that success didn't mean people would like you. Sometimes it made things worse. That lesson came back again and again in his comics. High school didn't go much better. He failed Latin, English, algebra, and even got a 0 in physics. He tried submitting drawings to the school yearbook, but every single one was rejected. He was crushed. He had worked so hard and they didn't even say why. That rejection haunted him for the rest of his life. At age 53, he even published his old report card to prove he wasn't as dumb as people said Dot in 1938. When he was just a teenager, his mother was diagnosed with cervical cancer. She slowly got worse over the next 5 years. At first, nobody told Charles how serious it was, but he saw her pain every day. She cried often. Morphine barely helped. He began drawing comics to cheer her up. It was the only way he could help. They moved into an apartment above the barber shop so his dad could check on her quickly. Charles saw her fade away bit by bit. Her cries would wake him up at night. She died on February 28th, 1943, just 3 days before he was sent to war. He never forgot the look in her eyes that day. In 1940, when he was 17, Charles signed up for a mail-order art course from the art instruction schools. It cost $170, which was a lot back then. Several months of his father's income, Carl still paid it, even though Dina's medical bills were piling up. Charles studied everything from figure drawing to lettering. Sometimes they couldn't afford electricity, so he worked by candlelight. He reused supplies until they fell apart. Later, to help pay for more lessons, he even got a job grading art for the same school. He was learning that chasing your dream meant making sacrifices, and that lesson stayed with him. In February 1943, Charles was drafted into the Army. He became a staff sergeant in the 20th Armored Division. He led a .50 caliber machine gun squad through Europe. His unit landed in France on February 19th, 1945. They marched over 1,400 miles through war zones. On April 30th, 1945, they arrived at Dachau just 1 day after the camp had been freed. Survivors were walking near their trucks. Charles never forgot the way they looked. That horror stayed with him for life. Although he led a gun squad, he only fired once and he forgot to load the gun. The German soldier gave up anyway. For his service, Charles received the Combat Infantryman Badge, one of his proudest awards. Before shipping out, he got one last chance to see his mother. He visited her on a short pass from Fort Snelling. She was dying. During their final talk, he told her, "We'll probably get a dog when I come back." That promise stayed in his heart. Snoopy later became that dog, the one he never got to share with her. When the war ended and he returned in late 1945, Charles was not the same. He was filled with grief and trauma. He moved back into the small apartment above the barber shop. He thought about ending his life, but kept drawing instead. He took a job at art instruction schools in July 1946, grading drawings for little money. It felt like he was going nowhere, but that office held seeds for his future. Some coworkers became inspirations for Peanuts characters. One of them was a red-haired woman named Donna Mae Johnson. Back in 1947, before his big break, he had fallen in love with Donna Mae Johnson, the red-haired accountant. They shared lunches and dreams. He thought she was the one. In 1950, just before Peanuts was launched, he proposed, but Donna said no. She was already engaged to someone else, Allwald, a man she had known for years. Charles was shattered. He called it the most painful loss of his life. Watching someone you love walk away and marry someone else crushed him. That heartbreak never left. It lived forever in the story of the little red-haired girl, the one who never loves Charlie Brown back. Charles Schulz's very first comic strip was called Lyle Folks. It started on June 8th, 1947, in the Minneapolis Tribune. Later, it moved to the St. Paul Pioneer Press. He only earned $10 each time they published it. The strip kept running until January 22nd, 1950, but then the editor crushed him. Schulz asked to move his comic out of the women's section and into the Real Comics page. He also asked for more money. The editor refused. After nearly 3 years of trying, Schulz was forced to quit. At that time, he was only 24 years old, living above his dad's barber shop, just trying to survive as a cartoonist. The loss was heartbreaking. Lyle Folks had been his first real break. He didn't give up. He pitched the idea again to United Feature Syndicate in 1950, but they told him the name Lyle Folks was too close to other strips. Schulz suggested Charlie Brown or Good Old Charlie Brown, but the syndicate ignored him. A production manager picked the name Peanuts from a list. He didn't even read the strip before choosing it. Schulz was embarrassed. He called it the worst name ever and said it had no dignity. He hated the name for the rest of his life, all the way until he passed away in 2000. He kept begging them to change it, but they never did. The first Peanuts strip came out on October 2nd, 1950. It was published in just 7 newspapers. Schulz made only $90 for the entire first month. That wasn't enough to live on, so he kept taking side jobs. One of them was lettering gravestones. The very first strip showed Charlie Brown walking past Shermie and Patty. Shermie smiled and said, "Good old Charlie Brown." But in the last panel, he turned and said, "I hate him." That dark twist showed exactly how Schulz felt inside. Snoopy joined the strip 2 days later on October 4th, but even with him, the early response was S.